All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Oh, my goodness. I'm overwhelmed, you know? Oh, please, you flatter me. Not since Putin was greeted by Trump has there been such a warm reception. Thank you, everyone. I love it. We are live across the globe. It's great to be with you from 2 to 4 on the eastern coast of the United States of America, from 11 to 1 on the western coast of the United States of America, and those times are rough, but generally those are the timelines that we work within. A lot to get to today. We will get to it, but I want to introduce my colleagues. Kim is here, everyone.
Kim, how are you?
And she is a wondrous force of support on this show. And yeah, I know, I love her, and she is always with me.
I blame you.
Yeah, and with the very finest of suggestions, of additions.
They are kissing my ass.
It is so true. We love her. And Tony is here, everyone.
Thanks, Tony.
Tony is the ninja when it comes to all things technical. And his favorite line is, here's Tony's favorite line. There's just not much we can do. It's just about StreamYard, you know, man? I mean...
Internet does internet things.
That's not fake.
Don't count on me
That's
for the
real.
support stuff
Yeah.
from Kim. No. You don't get that from me.
I would say his favorite line is really just,
Yeah, exactly.
If anyone knows me, that's absolutely true.
Yeah,
you know, like if you,
Yeah.
I can hear it when I put a story in. I'll see him looking at that. I get a like a little
Yeah.
sigh. I know.
Yeah.
It's Tony. You have to interpret the noises. Then you really get a feel for who he is.
But you do.
It's grunts
Last thing
and
on
swear
Tony
words.
is once you've interpreted, once you understand, once you've calibrated, you do then understand when something's serious, because he will react to something. You
Yes.
know what I mean? And then you know, oh, it must be serious, because very little moves his meter. You know what I
All
mean?
it takes is
So,
sound. Yes.
yeah, it's
Thanks, Tony.
yeah, he's very, very much on it. Tony and I have similar schedules this week in a way. You know, Tony
Yeah.
hustles a bunch of other jobs, as so many Americans do, so many people worldwide do, to make ends
Pinball's
meet.
expensive.
Yeah, it's expensive to live on this planet. And Tony's going over to KFI Radio in Los Angeles and on the great iHeart Radio network, where we can be heard. This show that you're watching or listening to right now can be heard on iHeart Radio. And we're both going over there after this. So if I mention this too because people always go, well, you never say when you're on the air in L.A. So I'll be doing the Conway show starting at 4 o'clock Pacific time today with Tony on
And
the
I will
board.
be there
So
too.
Thanks, Tony.
we're gonna have the
Taking
same,
over.
Yeah, the fates have aligned.
I'll be there in
Um,
spirit, fellas.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Kim, we haven't gotten you there yet, but just give us a moment. Lucy McAllister, my favorite McAllister, in early to the chat with a big shout out
Big shout out.
and super sticker for $20. Wow. Crowd-funded show. We love the crowd that is funding. People were into the chat early. A lot of reaction to the Zelensky Trump meeting at the White House. Richard Delamater for a $2 super chat says, Hunter S. Thompson is leaving Lake Tahoe. Don't wait up. Man, Lake Tahoe is pretty terrific. Always. It is one of the most beautiful places in the world, I think. V. Britton says, Putin has the dirt on Trump. Oh, yeah. Putin achieved what he wanted, says CBD. Trump confirmed how weak he really is yet again. We don't care about Trump words. He's not the adult in the room, says Olivia LFL. Nullifidian says, the lesbians next door gave me a Rolex.
What?
That was really sweet of them.
What?
But I think they misunderstood me when I told them I want a watch. I get it. I get it.
yeah.
Oh, it's very, I like a little, would you call that ribald humor? You know, just, or would you just call it tone deaf humor? What would you? Yeah, I don't know. One of the two.
Number two. Yeah.
There you go. That was a cold read. I just saw it and I thought, oh hey, I'm gonna jump on this. John Antal is anti everybody on the chat. He will tell you I think he might be MAGA. Let's see what he said today. I haven't read this. John Antal, hey Mark, it was Barack Obama who gave Crimea back to Russia in 2014 because the Crimean people voted over 98% to go back to Russia. Let me just stop you right there, John. You're right about Obama and the Crimean takeover by Russia. But when you say people voted over 98% to go back to Russia, dude, look at that comment. Look at yourself, John Antal. Look in the mirror. The people voted 98% to go back to Russia. Name me anything, any topic that is a legitimate topic that could appear on a ballot and tell me it got 98% of the vote. It's bullshit, John, okay? It's bullshit. You know it. When you want to rig an election, you don't go 98% because it looks too obvious. Nothing's 98%. So go back, John, and when you're making this argument again to whatever other show you show up on, lose that fact because it's not a fact. The Crimean people are ethnically Russian. Yeah, okay. Thank you. The other 2% were on the fence, John Watson says. Come on, dude. That's so weak. Why are you pro-war? I'm not the country that went into a sovereign nation, John. We did that. I am the country that went into a sovereign nation in Iraq. I hated it. I said I was against it from the very start. I never wanted us to go into Iraq. That was our Ukraine. Now Russia has a pretext. They go into Ukraine, and you're telling me I'm pro-war because I'm against the Russian aggression? Please, dude. John, you got to, I don't know, I'm starting to lose a lot of respect for you to the point I may not post your stuff as much. You know, I usually like oppositional views. I don't know. Don't see it yet.
It is a very a Trump thing to say today, though, because he took the option of returning any portion of Crimea off the table, and he also took out the possibility of Ukraine joining NATO off the table. So now he has to backtrack and say, oh, Obama's fault, right? He's looking for a scapegoat. Who's in charge today and right now? That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, no, you're right. A lot of we wouldn't have this war if I'd been in power instead of Biden when they stole the election. By the way, I was watching his comments, and Tony, maybe a little bit later, it's a live feed from there, and he's just kind of riffing. He's got Zelensky next to him. It's reminiscent of the first meeting, minus the roughing up, at least so far, that J.D. Vance did on Zelensky. But I would say the amazing thing to me is how he is on a loop. Every 6 minutes, he comes back to the election being stolen and Joe Biden, and it's insane. I mean, literally, you wonder about someone's sanity who has to return to this conversational talking point every 6 minutes. It's weird. When you wait online at Disneyland or whatever, and they play that video for you, they play some video to kind of mollify you, just kind of quiet you for the time that you're waiting, right? And after you've been waiting online for like a half hour, you've seen that video over and over and over again. It's just like, hey, dude, don't play that video anymore. Like, it was great to see it the first 10 times, but now I've seen it 20 times. And that's the way it is listening to Trump. He just continues to go back to the election was stolen and how I've been in office and Biden is stupid and what a stupid man. He never should have been in power. I won in a landslide. I won this last election in a landslide, etc. So it's crazy obnoxious. Now, let me get you caught up on things a bit.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Gary Dietrich joins us bottom of the hour, and before he gets here, I want to just review what happened. On Friday, we were on the air with you, and there was a live feed. We played a little bit of it, of Trump meeting Putin there on the tarmac, literally rolling out the red carpet. All of those things, by now, you're familiar with them, the kind of the two-step of diplomacy that is understood, all of those norms were violated. You know, Trump didn't speak first in the post, quote, press conference remarks. That is always the host country's responsibility to speak first. The red carpet, the flyover, it was all bizarre. I mean, Putin, and we had talked about this on the show for some time, had already won because they were having their summit on American soil. He had a legitimacy that was implied in all of that. But to double down on that legitimacy, you had literal red carpets rolling out and a flyover. And you can say, no, Mark, the flyover was to demonstrate American power. Really? I mean, we have flyovers at football games. We have flyovers on the 4th of July. Are you demonstrating American power to Americans? No, it's a way to punctuate the celebration. I've never liked it, but I understand why it's there. So already all of the norms and customs associated with diplomacy thrown out. The other thing, of course, is that Trump entered this without the State Department. This is a point I've made repeatedly, but it's a critical one. Without the State Department institutional knowledge of Ukraine and Russia, the history, the people, the specific people who are involved in this negotiation, all of that knowledge is gone because the State Department has been purged of all those people. Trump is a lone wolf. He can do it himself. He surrounds himself with sycophants like Marco Rubio. He's the closest to someone who knows something, but he is completely sold his soul. He'll say anything, and I'll play some stuff for you in a minute. So Trump goes in without any of this, no notes. I mean, imagine going into a meeting like this, critical meeting. It determines on some level the future of Europe. That's why all the European nations are so terribly concerned and in Washington today with key representatives. The future of NATO, the future of Russia and Ukraine, not to mention the bloodshed. This is a critically important thing. Goes in with no notes. And he goes in having done nothing. Just like the force of his personality, his star power is going to get this done.
All I got to do is show up, Mark. That's it.
And Putin, just the opposite. Hugely read in on everything, knows how to play Trump, knows how to discuss this situation, and knows he can pretty much lead Trump wherever, which he did. Here is Zelensky right after the Trump meeting with Putin. So we're going to get you caught up on everything that happened after that meeting, since we haven't been on the air since Friday. Go ahead, Tony.
First of all, I don't know what Putin and President Trump actually talked about, and I want President Trump to tell me a lot of details, and then to European leaders. And the fact that President Trump gave a signal about security guarantees is much more important to me than Putin's thoughts, because Putin will not give any security guarantees. Security guarantees are a strong army. Only Ukraine can provide that.
Yeah, that's very good. I think it's all about the security guarantees. And that's where Trump is going to find the waters sort of rising on him. He'll have to make some kind of commitment. Maybe the security guarantee will look like some version of the UN protectorate forces that go in. Trump has this weird relationship with all these things, right? Because he basically craps on the UN, he craps on NATO. He just, he just thinks, he has a very, it's like this hegemonic view of America. Like, we're the big, nasty country. It should be America, Russia, and China. And after that, you're all crap. That really is sort of his view. Now, I don't think he has any kind of well-developed, evolved view of the world, but I'm just saying that's sort of the way he sees it in his reptilian brain, which is the only brain that's working. So when Zelensky talks about security, he really is focused on what is a centerpiece moving forward, in addition to surrendering territory and everything. But the future peace will be determined by that security force. Now, I just want to quickly remind everybody, there was a security guarantee when Ukraine was asked to de-nuke in the 90s. We told them we'd give them security guarantees. And then Russia goes into Crimea under Obama. Nothing happened. And now Russia goes into Ukraine in a full-force war, a full-force attempt to take over the country, and we're not there for them either, apart from the way that we do so much now, which is it's a proxy war. We send them money, we send them arms, and most of those arms have been defensive, and we probably didn't respond quickly enough with offensive. They kind of have 10-foot pole marks all over them because we're so careful not to get involved in another confrontation where U.S. men and women have to be there defending some cause. Let's go to the coverage after the meeting. This is on Fox News Channel and Brett Baer, who rode there on Air Force One. Go ahead.
This joint news conference was anything but. It was not a news conference. There were no questions taken by either leader.
Brett, is it safe to say, since he didn't come out and say this is a ceasefire, a cessation of violence, that that is something we didn't get all the way there?
I mean, I think they would have led with it. It would have been the thing that they would have led with, that we agree to a ceasefire. We didn't hear it. And I think that could be disappointing.
Jackie, I was surprised no questions. I was surprised no details on what progress was made.
I think you and me both, Brian, and everyone else in this room was also surprised. There were a few things that were very unusual. You had Putin come out and address the press first. I mean, we are on U.S. soil here. Usually it is the leader of the country, the host country of a summit, that speaks first and addresses the room in their language. But Putin started right off in Russian, and we all had to get our headsets on and listen to him rattle off this diatribe. There was something that he said that was a little bit alarming, I thought, that seemed like some of the things that he has done in the past, setting up false flags and that kind of thing, saying that we hope that Ukraine doesn't do anything to sabotage the progress that we made today, knowing full well that Ukraine has agreed to a ceasefire unconditionally for the last several months, and it has been Russia that has not agreed to a ceasefire. There were some things that Putin said that are always cause for concern. When he references things like root causes,
I know.
It's always a reference back to his ultimate goal of taking all of Ukraine. It did not seem like things went well, and it seemed like Putin came in and steamrolled, got right into what he wanted to say, and got his photo next to the president and then left. Certainly President Trump, who is the host and who is the president, would not want to, I think, enable something that would make him look weak. But we are eagerly awaiting to hear the background on that.
So even Fox News reporters and anchors were stunned by this. The minute you hear Putin reference, we have to get to the root causes, you begin to get the picture. He's not yielding at all. And Trump, who was pledged to get a ceasefire before things started, now is all about ceasefire isn't important. Yeah, he's rethought it now as a result of the Putin conversation. Here's Eric Edelman with, actually, give me Angela Stent first, will you please, Tony? She's really smart. And Angela will give you it's a brief clip, but I wanted you to get some of that which was talked about in the hours and day following the summit in Alaska. Go ahead.
What you had happen was President Putin, who is by now an indicted war criminal, arriving in the United States. They literally rolled out the red carpet for him. He sat with President Trump in the Beast, the limousine, and they chatted to each other. We have no idea what they chatted about. They had, of course, an abbreviated meeting. They didn't have lunch, and they had a very abbreviated press conference. But President Trump came out of it reversing himself on what he had said the previous week when he had been discussing these issues with the Europeans and with Ukraine, saying he wasn't looking for a ceasefire, and that there had to be negotiations first before there would be a ceasefire. He did say that President Zelensky was going to come to the United States on Monday, the 18th of August, and it now appears that maybe some European leaders would come with him. But we appear to be back to where we were essentially in February, when President Zelensky was in the Oval Office and had the dressing down by President Trump and Vice President Vance, being told that he's going to have to cede territory and that there will be other compromises, and it's not clear what the Ukrainians might get were they willing to cede territory to Russia that Russia does not occupy. So the Ukrainians themselves, I think, have been very disappointed, although President Zelensky has at least posted that it's positive that he is coming to the United States. He's going to talk about these issues with President Trump. But this is not what they had hoped for, really, even going into the summit, because it reverses what President Trump was saying the previous week.
There you go. That was the day, again, after the smoke still not completely cleared from that Putin-Trump meeting. But I think two of the keys there are associated with having to give up territory and, of course, going back on, as I was saying, the commitment to a ceasefire. And the other thing that, is just so much a part of a negotiation, of course, is both parties have to feel like they won or both parties have to feel like they lost. In other words, there has to be give on both sides, right? That's what a negotiation is. And so I'm unclear, and I think we'll get a little clarity maybe this week, but I think I'm unclear, and maybe you can help. The giving up of something to Ukraine, apart from what seems to be some vague, flimsy, really has to be worked out security guarantee, I'm unclear what they get. I don't see how the Russians are giving up much of anything. In fact, the ask on the part of the Russians is what? They want the entire region that they have begun their incursion into for these years that they've been slogging away with this kind of World War I back and forth. I get it. Current technology, but the reality is, look at the way they're fighting this war. It almost feels like the trench warfare of World War I. Anyway, so they haven't even taken this entire region that they haven't even occupied this entire region that they want in this negotiation. So they have a big ask, and they want to talk about the root causes, and that suggests it was in response to some kind of NATO expansion. That's what that root causes thing is. Every time you hear that, that's the NATO expansion fear and the NATO expansion anxiety. That's that narrative. And so, in other words, I had to do this because NATO was expanding when you said NATO wouldn't expand. That's the shorthand, which is root causes. Now, give me a little bit of Eric Edelman, too, if you would, please. Again, these are just the thoughts in the post-Trump-Putin meeting days. And since we were on the air on Friday, I just wanted to give you a little flavor for it. Here's Eric Edelman. Go, he's on the left.
Little evidence that there was any pushback by Trump against
in the left
any
of the
of
picture.
this.
Yeah.
Now, the reality is, as the UK Ministry of Defense helpfully posted this morning, the reality is that if the Russians were to proceed at the same rate of advance that they have over the last 18 months, it would take them 4.4 years and another 1.9 million casualties, in addition to the well over 1 million casualties they've already sustained to accomplish that. Given all the weaknesses of the Russian economy and the opportunity we have to weaken them further with further sanctions, the idea that this is actually that easily winnable by the Russians, yes, if we roll over and we make the Ukrainians roll over, the Russians will win. But it's not a done deal by any stretch of the imagination. So from my point of view, Trump failed on his own terms. And this appears to have been what I would describe as a diplomatic route, a unilateral withdrawal by the American negotiating team from the positions that they had staked out before the summit.
Thank you. That's very, very good. Also to remind you that there are very different views of the war. I talked about this last week, and I got an email. I got a long email from a guy who said, you know, you're always talking about the fact, and David K. Johnson is talking about the fact that Russia is losing this war, or Russia is involved in a kind of deadlock with Ukraine, when in fact Russia will win the war and is winning the war. And then there are defensible arguments on that side. I ran this out last week with you. I think they're defensible. I can make the argument both ways, that Ukraine is in a militarily good spot and that the Russians are in a militarily good spot, or that they're both in the same spot. It's essentially a deadlock. I think all those arguments can be made credibly. But there was one position, which is, you know, gaming it out. It will take a long, long time to actually get to the kind of military victory that Vladimir Putin and Russia want. Give me also Marco Rubio, Tony. This is Marco Rubio over the weekend. He's the Secretary of State, although Secretary of State appears to be like riding in the, in the back of the caravan that brings Trump into this stuff. Because as you know, Trump and Putin hung out in the presidential limo. They call it the Beast, right? I mean, you had Vladimir effing Putin, who is a war criminal recognized as such around the world and is responsible for this bloodshed and this act of unmitigated aggression on Ukraine. You have him hanging out like they were two buddies, like, check out my car. Isn't this thing cool? I can order a cheeseburger by pressing this button. I can turn up the AC. Here, look, you got a favorite song? I can, any song you want. I can, it just made, the whole thing was weird.
I don't know, I had the silliest thought when I heard that Putin was riding around in the Beast. Wasn't Putin KGB or like some secret police? And I'm thinking, I hope they checked it for bugs afterward, because I wonder what he, like, did he leave anything behind? What he's putting in there?
Thank you. That's a great thought, too. Yeah. Hadn't thought it. Anyway, Marco Rubio's nowhere in that car. He's the Secretary of State. He's nowhere in this whole scene. But he has to go out there and hit the Sunday shows and tell you how great a meeting it was. Go ahead, Tony.
Mr. Secretary, a couple more questions and we're almost out of time. NBC News is reporting this morning that NATO-like security guarantees for Ukraine were discussed as a part of this agreement. Can you tell us what role would the United States play in such a security agreement?
Well, there'll have to be some security guarantees for Ukraine, right? I mean, it's one of their fundamental demands is that if this war were to end, they have to make sure this never happens again. They don't want to get reinvaded. They don't want to wait 3 or 4 years from now and find another, war on their hands. So there's going to have to be some security guarantees as part of it. How that's structured, how that's built, what our role will be, that'll be the kinds of things we'll have to work through. But again, that is going to be a key element of this deal. And it is something that in order for there to be a peace, the Russian side is going to have to accept that Ukraine is a sovereign country that has a right to defend itself and has a right to enter into alliances with other countries to defend itself. How that's constructed, what we call it, how it's built, what guarantees are built in there that are enforceable, that's what we'll be talking about over the next few days with our partners who are coming in from overseas tomorrow for a series of meetings and in the days to come. We had a long phone call about this yesterday with several of the national security advisors from various countries in Europe.
Mr. Secretary, I want to play something you said about President Putin. This was right after the invasion in March of 2022. Take a look.
This guy lies, habitually lies. He's never kept a deal they've ever signed, and he lies all the time. And I don't know why, but he plays us like a violin in the West, because the West wants to believe that you can cut a deal with everybody. You can't cut a deal with guys like this. He's a professional, experienced liar.
Mr. Secretary, given that, what makes you think that if you are able to reach a deal with President Putin, that he would stick to it, based on, as you just said, he's a liar?
Well, that's the point. That's why the deal has to have enforceable mechanisms in it. That's why the deal has to have things like security guarantees. That's the point I was making a few minutes ago when you were asking me about looking someone in the eye. What's important here is actions, not words, not paper, document. Those are all important. Those are elements of a deal, but they have to be enforceable. They have to be verifiable. They have to be enduring. There's no point here in signing a deal that's going to be violated in 3 or 4 months. There's no point in doing that. It actually would make things worse. So that's why this is such a difficult thing. Not only do you need a deal that's verifiable, that's enforceable, and that's enduring. If you don't achieve that, then I think you could have a ceasefire for a few months, a few weeks, and then the war will start again and more people will die. That's not the outcome we're interested in. That's not the outcome anyone wants. So that's why this is so difficult.
All right. Secretary of State Mark.
Yeah, that's, I thought his comments on Putin don't particularly age well, right? And, you know, he said the quiet part out loud, if you want to put it in the kind of the vernacular of today. I would also say that he, even in his role totally on a leash now because of Trump, totally in this role of sycophant and talking about how great Trump is, still in a way tips the reality, which is that there's a lot here. I mean, there is a lot to navigating any kind of security agreement. There's a lot to navigating any sort of land swap. And I don't know when swap implies, you know, Ukraine's going to get something also. And that, what are they going to get? I mean, this is a really tough one. And so I think the difficulty of it is reflected a bit in both Rubio's aspect, you know, how he talks about it, and also what he says. For once and for all, we need to have a congressional investigation into what Putin has on Trump, says Tony Ladoudy. Hopefully when the Democrats retake power. Yeah. Well, yeah, when Jesus comes back, is that when the Democrats retake power? Yeah, I think that same day. I don't know. I'll be very busy that day, but I'll try to catch what I can. Play me, if you would, please. Thank you, Candace Mick, for a super chat. Thank you, everybody who super chat. Candace, haven't heard from Candace in a while. Candace Mick is an OG.
Big shout out.
Yeah, big shout out to her. $10 super sticker. Appreciate that. I want to play for you the guy who well, before I get to him, I promise you I run him down. He's the key negotiator and all that. It's weird. He has leagues to learn when it comes to diplomacy. He has no background in diplomacy. The guy who's the key negotiator for Trump, Witkoff, he's a golfing buddy of Trump. He is a billionaire real estate guy. Those are the negotiations he's usually dealing with. We've made him the lead negotiator, not Marco Rubio, Secretary of State. This guy Witkoff, and he's lead negotiator in Middle Eastern stuff. He's lead negotiator in Russia. He's gone 5 times to navigate some kind of peace agreement. So I want to play a little something from him. So maybe I'll skip ahead and do that. Can you give me Witkoff, please? Tony, this is Witkoff just yesterday on CNN.
Jake, the one thing, we were there as a mediator, so we were obviously advancing the Ukrainian view. The one thing that the president cannot agree to on behalf of the Ukrainians is any sort of land swap. That is for the Ukrainians. They've asked us or stated that to us, and the president is respectful of it. But that's why we're moving so quickly to a meeting on Monday at the Oval Office with President Zelensky. That being said, we covered almost all the other issues necessary for a peace deal. So I described the ceasefire as the interim move where you would then negotiate towards a peace deal. We made so much progress at this meeting with regard to all the other ingredients necessary for a peace deal that President Trump pivoted to that place. Now, we're not waiting a week for a meeting with President Zelensky and the European leaders, or 2 weeks, or 3 weeks. We're going into a meeting with them within 48 hours of ending this meeting in Alaska. So we are intent on trying to hammer out a peace deal that ends the fighting permanently very, very quickly, quicker than a ceasefire.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's nothing quicker than a ceasefire because the peace agreement itself has, as I've just mentioned a few minutes ago, layers upon layers of details, and those can't be hammered out in an instant. So that's the story. That's your lead negotiator, Witkoff, your lead negotiator for the U.S. And as I've mentioned, he's, you know, again, he's a Trump. He's in the constellation of guys who are around Trump all the time, and I think that's how we got that job. I'm going to get to Gary in a second. I just want to mention one last thing. It's a weird fact, but apparently, and Kim, you know this, there were a bunch of details that ended up being left behind in a copy machine, like a photocopy machine, I believe it was. Isn't that what it was? And there were a bunch of...
It was a fax machine in a nearby hotel, and there were papers. I mean, it's such an egregious error that you wonder, did they do this on purpose?
Well, tell them. So what were in those papers? All the plans, the itinerary, the plans, all the way down to the luncheon meal that was planned for the post-summit
who was
meal.
going to be there. 8 pages were left behind at the Hotel Captain Cook, which is a 4-star hotel about 20 minutes from where the meeting took place at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Anchorage, Alaska.
Tony's showing it to you now.
Yeah. And so there it is. You get
the itineraries on the right, so you can see
yeah,
you know,
one of the
meeting at
hotels-
11:30, expanded meeting and working, and then
Yeah.
POTUS press conference prep, joint press conference, POTUS bids farewell, POTUS press interview with Sean Hannity. It's all laid out.
Pages 2 through 5, Mark, listed the names and phone numbers of 3 U.S. staff members and the names of 13 U.S. and Russian state leaders. Seriously.
What?
They
Yeah.
even had the, phonetic pronouncers, so that was nice that they did that. The pages 6 and 7 describe the lunch, which you saw there, and the menu included in the documents indicated it would be held in honor of His Excellency Vladimir Putin. That was in the notes as well.
We're showing you now, if you're just listening on YouTube and you're just listening on the podcast, I should tell you this is the seating arrangement that
Seating
is actually
chart
there.
shows
Seating
Trump
chart
and Putin
around
sitting,
the table.
sitting right across from each other. So you see that. It's just details, small details about how this thing played out. Left
Buttery
on a
whipped
pup-
potatoes and roasted asparagus are the sides, and a creme
delicious.
brulee with ice cream, always a strong choice.
When
Yes,
you
for
have the creme brulee with ice cream, you're in a much better mood to negotiate. That's
But
how.
they didn't have the lunch, did they, Kim? It all went so wonderfully that Trump just went right to the interview with Sean Hannity, and there was no lunch after the summit.
Is it incompetence? Is it sloppy? Do they know what they're doing? It's a comedy of errors. It's like we have the signal chat flap. Like, is anyone paying attention?
I've talked to you before about the fact that this is supreme incompetence. These people are amateurs. This is amateur hour. And I think things like this happen, and they only underscore how profoundly ignorant and how profoundly incompetent these people are.
This
They
is
cannot
the White House. This is the United States of America. You have like a first-time intern handling the documents at the hotel? Like, what? Really?
It is the
Sorry.
cornerstone of this administration, utter incompetence. But that bravado that follows is something that's also a cornerstone of this administration. All right, I'd love to continue and will continue. I have more to share with you, but I want to get to a really smart guy. So let me...
The Mark Thompson Show.
This guy is the political analyst for iHeart Media. He's a political analyst across the CBS television stations. He's so generous to come here and kind of continue the legacy of our old radio station, KGO in San Francisco, where he was really the North Star of so much political analysis. He is the great Gary Dietrich, everyone. Hi, Gary.
Mark, that is an absolutely spectacular introduction, which is not at all deserved. So thank you very much. Hey, I got to tell you something. I want you to know how crazy the world of politics has become. I mean, over the weekend, I get this sort of 4-alarm message from our CBS TV crew here in Sacramento that the CBS National Radio Network really wants to interview me about, Newsom's big info dump on Friday night and all the new congressional maps. So while you're sunning on the beaches in Southern California yesterday at 3:30 in the afternoon, my brother, I'm taping a national CBS radio hit so they can run it nationwide, top and the bottom of the hour news, part of their news stuff today. So I just want you to know, man, slaving away for the future.
I love it. That's our guy. I'm this week on the air in Los Angeles. Maybe I'll tap you for a little hit there as well. The last time I had Gary on the air with me in Los Angeles, this is how good he was. They said, hey, we really like that guy. Can we use him here on KFI in LA? Yeah, just contact him and
to
make
which
that
Mark,
happen.
of course, replied, absolutely not. He's mine. Thank you.
I told him you can't afford him, is what I said. All right, I will get to redistricting and the state of the state on that, because I know that's sort of, you're really a ninja in that area. But I really want to tap you on the dust having not even really settled on the Putin-Trump summit, and now there's another meeting at the White House, even while we're talking right now.
Yeah. Well, I heard some of your lead-in, Mark, so I'll just hit a couple points real quick, okay? Number one, today's meeting, by the way, is historic. Many people may not be aware of the fact that there's never before been so many heads of state coming to the White House Oval Office at the same time that we have any record of. I mean, this is quite significant. What does that say? I think it, in many ways, I think it really honors the gravity of the situation for Ukraine. I mean, you've got a lot of heads of state that are really in Ukraine's corner. And I think today was, for lack of a better term, Mark, sort of a political show of force is what we're seeing in Washington today on behalf of the Ukrainians. So that's that. I heard you talking about Witkoff versus Rubio in terms of negotiating. That's a really interesting one to me, because by all accounts, and I mean, you can go even walk through the halls of the U.S. Senate, and Democrats as well as Republicans will quietly, if not loudly, say Marco's doing a heck of a job. I mean, there really is a sense that, while some say, okay, yeah, he's, basically doing Trump's bidding, but this guy is effective. He's an effective communicator. He knows foreign policy better than probably anybody else right now in the U.S. Senate. And so he's getting high marks. Why they're not using him more directly in some of these negotiations? Does he have 25 other irons in the fire internationally? Yes, but it is a little bit of a head scratcher in that regard.
Well, wait. When you talk about Marco Rubio getting all of these plaudits from his former colleagues in the Senate, and he's doing a great job. Doing a great job how? I need a specific on that.
I think the sense in which is that sometimes you'll see him actually temper or walk back some of the Trump team comments or the president himself and bring a little bit more realpolitik to things. You know what I mean? Okay, well, all right, but this is how it really is. And the thing about it is, Trump doesn't squelch him on that stuff. I mean, you can tell Marco's really got his own lane, and he does, he pretty much calls him like he sees him. And he's actually in recent weeks walked back some things that others have said, it's actually really more like this. And nobody challenges him. I mean, he is, I'll be honest with you, from the inside Washington perspective, he is the real foreign policy voice that most people truly trust.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. He's also, as you know, historically way anti-Russian with the Cuban background of Rubio. He's not he doesn't trust. I played you the comment. He said, you can't negotiate with Vladimir Putin. You can't trust him. He's a liar. You can't count on anything in any agreement he'd ever make. That was his position just a few years ago.
Well, I don't think he's moved off that very much, to be honest with you. I mean, I think that's still where he is. And, for good reason. I mean, that, by the way, that view is widely held in a bipartisan way in both the House and the Senate. I mean, this is not, he's not in any way out of the congressional mainstream in that view. And by the way, as you also know, he's very tough on China. I mean, this is a guy, Rubio's basic geopolitical view is this, that we are in a massive geopolitical struggle with Russia and especially China. And we better wake up and smell the coffee on a daily basis about that.
Yeah. So why not drive Russia and China closer together by imposing withering tariffs on all of our allies and smack talking NATO? I mean, it's the most.
He doesn't get to make those kind of choices. It's interesting the way Trump has bifurcated the tariff thing from the rest of the foreign policy. Because as you'll notice, he uses his economic people, his Treasury Secretary and others on the tariff side of it, though it has, of course, massive political implications internationally in terms of our geopolitics. So I think, unfortunately, for Marco, those are some conversations that he probably would like to be closer inside the room on.
Just as an aside, I mean, economic terrorism, which is what I would call these tariffs, it's a kind of war. So when, and again, these are my opinions, but when you talk about Trump as this guy who doesn't want to get us into a war, he wants to get us out of wars, that's what I like about him. He's not some neocon. Economic back and forth of the sort that we're seeing now, that's its own kind of confrontation. I mean, in a way, it's a more contemporary sort of war. I mean, I understand old school war where you're killing guys and, you have a front line and they have a front line, but the economy, as it's now linked worldwide, that can be the next theater of war. And I'd suggest it is, and Trump is part of that in a big way, starting things unprovoked.
Well, I think, there has long been, for many decades, a sense and a sort of, bifurcation of international power by any superpower, particularly economic and military. Now you can add a third that people are talking about more and more, Mark, and that's information, technology, okay? And how the impact that used to always be sort of, they would call it hard power and soft power, that being military and economic. But now you've got this third universe spinning out there, and that is who's going to win the AI war and who has better electronic intelligence, et cetera. So really right now, it's a three-part, international geopolitical sort of tour de force by any significant player.
Just on that point, later in the week, we're going to have a conversation with Pulitzer Prize-winning writer Michael Hiltzik about the deal that NVIDIA just made to sell a bunch of chips to China. They had to get okay from the Trump administration. Again, these adversaries, China, you're so worried about them getting AI and the AI upper hand that Gary's talking about. We'll be talking about that with Michael later in the week. Before I leave Ukraine and I get to the redistricting, I want you to talk about what Trump seems to have signed on for, which is that Russia, you've got Crimea and you're going to keep it. You got it under Obama. If I'd been president, never would have happened. And then you're going to keep a lot of these portions of eastern Ukraine where there is a Russian presence. If I'd been president instead of Biden, that's never would have happened. All of those you can see on the screen now to the right and to the eastern part of Ukraine. That's where there is a Russian presence. And essentially, Putin wants all of that and wants to keep all of that. And in return, so for Crimea and all of those things, he is saying, we'll get some kind of security guarantee, but not until we understand the root cause of what happened, which, as you know, is the shorthand to Gary to say NATO expansion is the problem. We want total neutrality of Ukraine. We don't want them connected to the West at all. They will be their own sovereign nation, which is another way of leaving them vulnerable, in my judgment. But that essentially is the proposal that Trump is repping on the part of Putin to all these European nations today.
Well, I think you've hit on a couple really key points to this entire conflict and prior, Crimea and even earlier. In terms of land, there's always been a sense, and the Russians have made no mistake about this, quietly and sometimes loudly. They want the so-called land bridge to the sea. They want that strip of land that you pointed out there so that they can have direct Russian access, not across anybody else's territory, to the Black Sea. That has been their goal. That was the initial goal for going into Crimea. It remained this goal. It's no secret why the Russians started their attack on that border, okay, and not another one. Now, they tried to get to Kyiv, and that was an absolute disaster, as you know, and then they clearly gave up on that. And this has been their goal. What you're seeing right now has been that access. So in terms of land, that's what they want. The major thing for Ukraine, they've said, we don't want to cede any land. And that is true. I mean, Zelensky's been absolutely adamant about that. And he should be. Given the invasion, he absolutely should be. But when the push comes to shove, what they want even more are these security guarantees. That's the language that's being used, okay? And they initially, of course, were pushing hard for NATO membership. That does not look as likely. And by the way, it's not just the U.S. There's other NATO members who are far more adamant about not guaranteeing that, at least right now, to Ukraine. But this sort of, what you heard yesterday was Witkoff and others using this language like, well, basically it looks like Putin has given up on, no security guarantees, which was his initial position for Ukraine, and saying they're using this term, Article 5 like security guarantees, which Article 5 is the NATO component that guarantees mutual protection. So bottom line is this. I mean, if I had to say where this looks like it's going, and who knows where it's going to end up, Mark, it looks like where it's going is Russia getting some kind of land bridge to the Black Sea, and the Ukrainians not agreeing to anything besides that, and them saying, okay, if we get, and now the Europeans are proposing actual European troops inside Ukraine with an American air shield, as they're calling it, both air defenses, missile, and maybe even planes, American planes, assuring that that airspace is protected. That's where it looks like right now this is going.
When you talk about NATO and you talk about NATO countries and NATO expansion, I just think of the kind of varied nature of the countries that are in NATO right now, Gary. You know this, like the alliance that produced NATO had certain kind of requirements. You know, you had to be an emerging democracy and freedoms and all this stuff. And then you look to see through the decades how it's evolved, and you end up with some place like Hungary, which is, I think, less reflective of the ideals that are talked about when you talk about NATO ideals than some of the other countries. In other words, the rising authoritarianism and the differing interests of NATO countries, they make that alliance sort of a weird, troubled one already, I think.
Well, you make a good point, Mark. And for example, Turkey's another example. People are like, what gives with Turkey? Every time we try to do something, Turkey's always, I mean, Turkey, remember, was the one that famously said, no, we're not having Sweden. That's not going to happen. And remember, folks, one NATO member can veto any major NATO decision. It has to be kind of all for one, one for all. So Turkey really held that thing up. They finally got past that, and now Sweden's in. But you make it a good point. Here's one other thing I think is key when you look at the map for Ukraine and why this Article 5 light guarantee may be enough, particularly with the new inclusion of Finland and Sweden, along with Poland around there, and of course Germany on one border of Ukraine. I mean, Ukraine is really surrounded by NATO protection. So this is another thing that I think makes them feel safer. I mean, you got Belarus there. They're always creating problems, it seems like, for Ukraine at the behest of Moscow. But the bottom line is, especially with the addition of those two key Nordic countries, who, by the way, people don't know, Finland and Sweden are very well armed and very well trained and very well prepared militarily. And they have made no bones about the fact that Russia puts one tiny foot across one of those borders and it is game on. So I think there's a greater sense now than there even was when Russia went in before Sweden and Finland were part of NATO, that, okay, we got a lot of strong neighbors basically surrounding 3/4, almost 2/3 of Ukraine, that will be there in a heartbeat if Russia messes around again in the future. We'll see.
Yeah, thanks for that map, Tony. That kind of gives you an idea of NATO and when these various NATO nations moved into the alliance. And you can see the more recent additions to the north. Yeah.
And I think another part, Mark, sorry to interrupt, but I think another part that we have to remember, because it doesn't get talked about enough now, was what happened to NATO after Russia went in. I mean, remember, NATO was kind of in shambles, people thought. And, people said, well, Putin's now guessing that NATO won't even react. Well, of course, just the opposite happened. And most analysts on both sides would agree that NATO is stronger now almost at any time since its inception.
All right. That's where we are now. And while NATO is stronger, as Gary says, it's very likely that you can't have NATO per se anyway as part of any security agreement, given the fact that Putin views NATO as a real problem. So, I mean, he views it as the problem, the problem that necessitated him going into Ukraine. But anyway, in addition to a bunch of other stuff, but there'll be they're trying to cobble together some kind of security guarantee that he'll be okay with. We'll have more of that conversation, and those negotiations are going on now. But essentially, Trump is now proffering that which Putin went over with him in a slam bam, thank you ma'am meeting in Alaska. Unbelievable. To me, it was just astounding to see Putin and Trump riding in the presidential vehicle, to see the red carpet, the flyover. I mean, you got to admit, Gary, that was all pretty wild.
Yeah, I'll tell you, there's two schools of thought on this, okay? One is that was absolutely ridiculous, okay? Come on, are you serious? This is the guy that we all know, has been, for lack of a better words, let's just say it, an international henchman and an absolutely brutal leader of that nation. That's one school of thought. The other one is, this is the classic, not just Trump, this is classic negotiation, sly like a fox. This guy, last week, the thing was, the biggest thing for Putin is to be, again, accepted on the quote unquote global stage, look like a world leader, have somebody, acknowledge him, put him on the red carpet, shake his hand. And Trump did that in spades. So there's some thought, the other school is, this was just sly like a fox. Okay, I don't care about a freaking red carpet and the beast, the vehicle he runs in, and a couple of B-2s flying over and shaking his hand. Fine. If that gets this guy to start backing down on some things eventually next week, when we get serious about these negotiations, let him have the trappings. We'll take the actual meat on the table. So we'll see.
That's interesting. Yeah. Wow, I've never driven in a big limousine before. Thank you. You can have whatever you want, Mr. Trump.
At least he didn't get a ride in Air Force One. Now, that would have been over the top right there.
Hey, don't speak too soon. The bromance is just kind of getting some momentum.
That could happen. Who knows?
Yeah. All right. Now, let me quickly ask you about California and the redistricting nationwide. So Texas wants to redistrict in a insanely gerrymandered state already. They want to gerrymander even more, produce 5 more seats. Looks like they've done that. They drew up the maps. Kind of behind closed doors. There wasn't a big... Newsom taking sort of a different tack, which is, hey, you guys do that. I'm going to respond in kind, although I'm going to put it out to my electorate in California to allow me to gerrymander these maps or to redraw these maps to produce these additional seats. What's the state of the state on that?
Okay. Well, first off, let's be clear about a couple things. The California maps, the new ones, are just as gerrymandered as the Texas ones, just as gerrymandered as the New York ones, as the New Jersey ones, as the Illinois one. I mean, this is equal opportunity gerrymandering where people have been able to get away with it, Mark. I mean, there's just, any objective political science person will tell you that. And if people don't believe, go look at the maps in all those states. This is not advantage red, advantage blue in terms of moral high ground in this thing. That's just the facts. There's no getting around that. Okay. So yes, Trump asked Texas 5 more seats. They're gerrymandering their maps even more. We had gerrymandering, and as we've talked about before, in California, clear up until 2008, when Arnold Schwarzenegger led the charge to get the Independent Redistricting Commission by citizens. Then in 2010, another ballot measure to get the congressional seats added to that. But those are the facts, and there's just no getting around that from a political science, academic kind of perspective. Now, Gavin Newsom likes to make a lot of course about putting it in front of the voters. He has to do that. What was put on the ballot in 08 and 010 are constitutional amendments. Those can only be changed by a vote of the people. And therefore, to have this mid-district redrawing of the maps, he had to go before the voters again. That's going before the California legislature today. Those maps were released. What a shock, Mark. After 5 o'clock on Friday night.
So it's their own version of behind closed doors.
Oh, it's just one on both sides, Mark. I've been doing this almost 4 decades. This is just standard operating political procedure, man. People were asking me last week, well, the governor says he might release them on Thursday at his press conference in LA. I said, that ain't going to happen. Absolutely not a chance. The maps will be teased on Thursday. This is my line. First you tease the maps, then you hide the maps. And that's exactly what we saw. And it wasn't until, I don't know, those people were slaving away. I guess they couldn't get them possibly released till Friday after everybody went home. And that's what happened. And that's just standard politics. I'm not dissing anybody in specifics because of that. So the deal is this. Today they go before the California legislature, plus the funding mechanisms, because it's going to cost almost $250 million to fund this special election statewide on November 4th, along with the language to allow those maps to be had and the actual maps themselves. And there you have it. Now, let me, because you love me, to, as you like to say, talk you off the ledge, Mark. I'll give you one bright spot that's going to bring a smile to your partisan face today, okay? Here's the deal. Here's the deal, my friend. Believe it or not, and you can look at this objectively, it's really true. The Democratic redrawing in California actually is a better, more impactful deal than the one currently on the table in Texas. Why is that? Because not only are they basically trading 5 seats each, right? 5 new blue districts in Texas, 5 new red districts. 5 new red districts in Texas, 5 blue ones in California. But the way the California maps were redrawn, they've also bolstered 5 semi-marginal swing Democratic seats in California. So what they've done is sort of looks like they're nearly guaranteeing. There's 3 or 4 that look pretty sure, and one that might be a little shakier for Dems to take control of, but they should be able to do that in California. But they also were politically smart. Willie Brown would be so proud of them that they bolstered 5 blue districts in California that were a little bit purplish, a little bit not so sure guaranteed. Because remember, Democrats picked up 3 House seats last time around in California. So the Republicans didn't do that. They've left the rest of their seats the same. So you net this thing out, there's a chance that the Democrats could be in better shape after their redrawing than the Republicans are in Texas. That's what your real wonky Kennedy school types are saying.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right. That does lift my spirits a bit. I can't let you, as long as we're talking about elections, leave, because I can't wait a week to talk to you again about this. It was just this spill, when Trump kind of in the middle of the night spills his whatever's on his mind. He blasted out on a Truth Social post that he wants to get rid of mail-in voting, and he wants to get rid of all of the voting machines. He wants to go back to old school. He's really time stopped in 1955 for him anyway. So the idea is these things are fraudulent, blah, blah, blah. You can't count them. And then Putin, and he referenced this. Putin and I discussed this at our summit. And Putin agrees with me. Putin, the great expert on fair elections, agrees with Donald Trump that these things should be eliminated. Can you just speak to this, please?
Well, the Putin thing is absurdity writ large, okay? Come on. Like, we have fair and free democracy and elections in Russia. There are times when you say, Donald, you really are tripping over your own feet on, and somebody just needs to get that old cartoon Hook out, right? Like we saw in the cartoons when we were kids, and yank that dude off stage when he says crazy things like that. I mean, you can cite, you can cite French elections, maybe, or German ones, I don't know, British ones. You cannot cite Russian elections as your model, okay? That's just not going to be a good way to go. Yes, thank you. Now, the thing about it is this. Trump has we've talked about this many times before. He has absolutely no direct control or influence whatsoever on how elections are going to be conducted in individual states. In terms of mail-in ballots and all the rest of it, that is a state-by-state process. That's frustrated Republicans. It's frustrated Democrats to no end. People always ask me, why do we have national standards? Well, you know what? That's part of the founding fathers' things, that states have their own autonomy. So that's the reality of it, friends.
And here's the post from Trump. You can read it. I'm not going to read the whole thing.
I'll end with this, Mark. This is another one of those. I got up in the middle of the night to get a cup of hot cocoa, and I decided, what the heck? This is still bugging me. I'm tweeting this out, whatever the timestamp was on that, 2, 3 in the morning, whatever.
Yeah. 4:17 a.m.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Love your takes. You do sometimes calm me. Sometimes the way you refer to everything is sort of like, just like, don't get worried. Sometimes it worries me that you're not worried.
Well, listen, it's not a matter of not being worried, Mark. But you can imagine, I have, some would say, thrived, not just survived, in this politics and media business for almost 4 decades. If I were, I would not be talking to you right now. I'd be 6 feet under if I let worry absolutely control my psyche every single day.
But you have to admit, especially to you, with all those decades of doing this, and with the learned guy that you are, having gone to Harvard and all that stuff, this is unprecedented. This administration.
Let's not mistake the fact that Harvard grad school took a couple years off my life too. Okay, I mean, that right there is enough to send a guy over the edge sometimes. But no, we are in so many uncharted waters, and I'll just, if we want to end this thing on,
we got to finish up, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna even know more. It's just the pace and scale of it, really. It's the number of issues, the scale of them, and the rapidity of them is what, to me, is the single biggest challenge about this whole era.
I'll see you in Washington, D.C. We'll have a dinner and be protected by military troops that line this. I've never felt safer having dinner with you in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, that's so good. I'm going to go to the National Guard Cafe, the new one that's going to open.
Gary Dietrich, find him on iHeart Radio and across the CBS television network, and appreciate you being here, pal. Thank you.
Of course, buddy.
Good stuff. And Gary is brought to us by Bill Campbell at Remax Gold. If you're relocating into or from Northern California, Bill Campbell is an expert in that region particularly. He's a highly respected real estate professional, and you can text him, you can call him. Bill Campbell at Remax Gold, 530-448-7474. 448-7474. Bill Campbell, Remax, go.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Right on. Thank you, everybody. You've got a spirited chat going. You're all welcome to comment in real time. We're a live show, 2 hours-ish. We usually go a little over 2 hours every day, Monday through Friday. And, of course, we wanted to try to catch up on things that happened after we went off the air on Friday. And now, even as we say that, there are things going on in Washington with a meeting of European leaders and the President of the United States. Tony, give us a little bit of what's happening today in Washington. I think you have a little video of what's happening in the Oval Office and also at the White House. Trump meeting with Zelensky. Trump, of course, meeting with Zelensky and other NATO leaders, European leaders who have all descended on the White House, essentially, I think, to kind of maybe give Zelensky some protection. And we saw what happened the first time Zelensky was there. So you can almost pick this up anywhere. I think you'll see what I was talking about when I was talking about the fact that Trump just defaults to this narrative, blaming Biden, blaming Obama, talking about how the election was stolen. I should have been president in 2020. This wouldn't have happened. Here is a little bit of it. Go ahead, Tony.
The United States has already given hundreds of billions of dollars to this war effort in Ukraine.
This is a planned
At best,
reporter.
it is a stalemate, and the killing continues. So, President Trump, how much more is the United States willing to give Ukraine? And President Zelensky, how much more do you want?
Well, I'll start off just by saying we're not giving anything now. We're selling weapons. This is something before, I guess the number is well over $300 billion. That was under Joe Biden, a corrupt politician, not a smart man, never was. By the way, go back 40 years. He was not a smart man 40 years ago either. But now he's in particular bad. This was done by a corrupt administration that shouldn't have been in, and frankly, if the right results of the election were given, if I were president, this war would have never taken place, and he would have been very happy, because he would have liked to have seen. I mean, they went through hell. He went through hell. This war would have never happened, and the people that were killed, a couple of million people, a lot of people with soldiers and everything else, and the people that have been displaced and forced into other areas and other countries because of what's happened, none of that would have happened. And I'm just saying that he was a horrible president, whether it was the borders or this, he was just a horrible, corrupt president.
Mr. President,
you want to
I can. Thank you so much. So first of all, we have possibility now to buy weapon from the United States. We are thankful for this program and this opportunity. We are thankful for Europe. They paid for this. And through NATO program, for example, Pearl and etc., we have some programs where we can have some money to finance this. And this is a part, I think, it's not a part for the war and to defend us. It also will be a part for security guarantees, to strengthen our army, to rearm Ukrainian army. This is very, very important. And it depends how much money we need to rearm. For example, the question of air defense, we spoke about it with President Trump, and I'm happy that we have now bilateral decisions and we work on it with production, American production. Nobody in Europe has so many air defense like Patriots, for example. We need it very much, and this is also about defending.
I think the good news, we make the best military equipment in the world by far. You mentioned the Patriots. How good are they?
Systems.
We have systems.
There's a little bit of ad pop, and we'll get you right back to it in 1 second. But you can get the back and forth, and you get the riff that Trump is doing. Let's take you back inside. Go ahead, Tony.
100% foolproof, and it's really like shooting two bullets. You know, two bullets hitting each other in the air in a space like this. The chances, 100%. It's 99 to 100%. So we sell the equipment to NATO, and NATO does what, I don't know what the arrangement is that you have with, but I know that they want you to have the equipment. And we're getting the best equipment in the world, but they pay us for the equipment. Under Biden, it was just crazy what was going on. I believe the number is over 300. I think it could be $350 billion worth of equipment and money and everything else. And we've made more progress in settling this war in the last 2 months and they made in 4 years. This should have been settled a long time ago, but it should have never happened. Yeah, please.
Real quickly, you pushed out on social media.
Brian, go first.
You pushed out on social media about doing away with mail-in ballots and potentially electronic voting machines. Can you expand on that and how important
Well,
that is?
that's a very off topic, just really quickly. Mail-in ballots are corrupt. Mail-in ballots, you can never have a real democracy with mail-in ballots.
Okay,
and we, as a Republican Party, are going to do.
It's all such crap, and he tweeted it in the middle of the night, and it's also, it really is true. I mean, I'd love to roast Trump on all of these different things, but that really is off topic. There is a life and death struggle going on between Ukraine and Russia and the future of Europe and the future of the world. There's a real crisis, and that's why all of these leaders descend on the White House. But what you get with the White House press corps now, they've been reconstituted. They're all these, like they're YouTube stars, and they're like lame ass reporters who've just been placed there to ask simple questions. That was the one that was the setup. You heard it. We've already given so much money to Ukraine, Mr. President, and we've gotten nothing. I mean, at best a stalemate. I mean, how much longer is this going to continue? You hear these stilted kind of questions that way. That's all from a degraded White House crew. But again, that last question about the mail-in ballots, we just addressed it on the show, and you can go back and listen to it, Gary. I do think it's significant, but again, it's sort of off topic for what's going on
Yes, this is Trump,
today.
and I hope that we will find this.
Here is Tony's looking for some additional stuff, but that's Steve Ducey from Fox. Is that right, Becky? You know the you know the sounds of these guys better than I do. I mean, you know, his dad is Steve Ducey. Is that Steve? Whatever. The Duceys, I always lose track of them. I wouldn't mind hearing a little of the NATO stuff. You have the NATO guys who are there at the White House. Here's a little bit of that. This is a NATO around the table meeting with Zelensky. I think you'll hear Zelensky speaking first. Go ahead, Tony.
Meeting, and he said that he will come or not come. Ukraine will be happy if you will
both want me there, I will be there.
Yeah, thank you. And I think this is very important. Yes, so security guarantees, bringing kids back, and all our people, not only warriors, first of all warriors, and all the civilians, journalists, a lot of people in prison. So we need them back. And guarantees which will work for the years. We spoke about it, and I showed the President a lot of details on the battlefield, on the map. Thank you so much. Thank you for the map, by the way.
Good map.
It was great. Yeah. I'm thinking how to take it back.
We'll get you.
No. I think that we had constructive, specific meeting, and I'm very thankful to all the leaders who are here, and you help a lot, and so we're happy.
So Zelensky, humble, trying to turn on a little bit of charm it's a very tough position he finds himself in. He needs all of those countries who are there at the table represented by leadership. He needs them all to step up. Any kind of security guarantee has to have their buy-in, and they have an interest, everyone at that table, in restraining Russian expansionism. And so this is of significance for both sides. It's not just Zelensky begging for help. It's these nations realizing that left to his own devices, Trump will make a deal with Putin, and Europe's future will very much be affected by the deal that they make. I mentioned, and then I want to get to Kim's news. I mentioned Matt Duss, who's really a smart guy, talking about there's a thing that's happening, and you'll see it in our chat maybe once in a while. Most of the trolls in the chat, like John Anton and stuff, they kind of, it's sort of hacky. They don't really have any high-end criticism of the Ukraine and NATO expansion that is supposedly the reason that Putin began this entire military incursion into Ukraine. He thought it would be a much easier ride into Ukraine militarily than it obviously was. But I think it is instructive, and I'll play you a very short clip because there is a narrative out there, and it's on the left. Okay, a lot of very progressive minds will tell you it was NATO expansion that provoked essentially this response from Putin. And until you understand that, you're not going to understand this whole thing. We brought it on, the Ukrainian people. The basic freedoms associated with the West are really what Ukrainians have both aspired to and embraced. So as Ukraine leaned further to the West and those freedoms, and certainly NATO, although it was not clear in the least, both because the NATO alliance knew that it would provoke Russia, and also because there were NATO nations that didn't want Ukraine to be part of it. You know, we were talking about it with Gary. I mean, Turkey, et cetera. As I recall, there were a couple of NATO nations, as you know, where it's a non-starter. So that Hungary, I think, voted against it. But the point is that this is a narrative that you're going to hear more and more, and it does deserve to be shot down. Here's a little bit of Matt Duss talking about that. And he's talking back to John Mersheimer's a very smart guy, but he is of that narrative that I just spoke of. So this is Matt speaking back at it.
I mean, first, I want to just respond to something Professor Mersheimer said. I mean, it's baffling to hear him claim that there's no evidence that Putin wanted to conquer Ukraine and establish a new kind of Russian imperium. Putin has said this explicitly. I would encourage people to look at that June 2021 speech that I mentioned. He also, landed troops outside Kyiv in February 2022 as part of the failed effort to topple Ukraine's government and install his, a friendly Russian government. Those Russian troops were not landed in Kyiv to go camping. So that effort failed, but I think that's clear evidence that Putin's ambitions were much larger than the professor seems to claim. Now, with regard to the Maidan,
I mean, it's really I think it's pretty clear. The Russian expansionist ambitions, I think, are on full display. And so you can say that's a very kind of traditional view of it or Western view of it. I think it has the additional virtue of being true. So I want to get to Kim's news, and I'll pick up some other stuff. There is breaking MSNBC news, I guess. Kim is saying...
The Mark Thompson Show.
What's happening at MSNBC? I mean,
it's a name change. They are... It's kind of a divorce between NBC and MSNBC. And as part of this, they have to change their name. Wow. And they are going to go by... MS Now, and it stands for, you see on the screen there, My Source News Opinion World. MS Now.
It's fantastic.
MS Now.
I don't know about that.
My Source News Opinion World. My Source News Opinion World. That's what it is.
Wow.
So that's part of the thing they have to do.
The divestiture, you're saying Comcast is kind of spinning them off, is what you're saying?
Yeah. They also have to give up using the Peacock, which is a bummer for everyone because everyone loves the Peacock. So later this year, the Peacock will be stripped away from MS Now. The name change was ordered by, there it is, MS Now. The name change ordered by NBC Universal. They're spinning off cable networks USA, CNBC, MSNBC, Entertainment, Oxygen, and the Golf Channel into another company called Versant. But none of the other channels are changing their name. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there are legal reasons to do that, of course. So you're essentially not exposed in some ways to some of the legal
NBC name.
They're also, if you want to essentially sell off a bunch of the divisions, which I think they have done. They're doing it across the board. Fox did it, this is a good way to do it, right? You create these separate entities and then you can begin to strip them away. Don't you think, Tony? That's what's going on. Tony's a big one for the merger, acquisition, strip away stuff. I can't hear you, but yeah.
Tony's been advocating for MS Now for a while,
Yeah.
He's wanted
Tony
that.
likes the MS Now.
Yeah.
You there? There we go.
I hear you.
I was remember my thing is it's good they finally changed the name from Microsoft NBC.
Oh yeah, they were.
That's what that name was.
The MS is Microsoft. He's absolutely right about that.
Thanks, Tony. Started.
Yeah. So what's the new one again, Tony? It's MS Now.
Yeah.
My Source News Opinion World.
I see. They kind of try to. All right, there you go. The other big cable news news is that Newsmax has agreed to pay $67 million in defamation damage that they did by spreading lies about President Trump's 2020 election loss. That's right, a big settlement. Once again, the conservative network Newsmax paying $67 million to settle this lawsuit. It defamed a voting equipment company, spreading lies about the 2020 election loss and how votes were switched. Votes that were for President Trump went to Biden. That's what they maintained on their network. The settlement comes after Fox News Channel paid $787.5 million to settle their lawsuit, which was similar. That was in 2023. And Newsmax paid what court papers are describing as $40 million to settle a libel lawsuit from a different voting machine manufacturer, Smartmatic.
Mm-hmm.
So this is yet another shoe that has dropped on the BS that followed that election.
You mean they lied, Mark? What?
Where's my "you, sir, are a liar"?
You, sir, are a liar.
Yeah, there you go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Calling me a liar. Know what you calling me?
You
are a cover-up artist, and you are a liar.
Yeah, all right.
So surprised. Why would they lie to me, Mark?
It seems odd, but apparently there's more and more. The kids are doing the lying. All right, Kim's News, and we continue. Way more to get to, but that's a real drill down on Ukraine, NATO, the future of the alliance, how Ukraine is integrated into that, and how, most importantly, any kind of security guarantee. You're hearing all about security guarantee. It's huge, security guarantee. That's the centerpiece of everything. Like, how can we make a deal unless our security is guaranteed? We'll get into more of that. I think we've given you a pretty good idea of what's happening. And again, any security guarantee can't really be NATO troops because Russia hates NATO. They give you chapter and verse about that's what provoked this military move. So you have to craft some security guarantee that doesn't include NATO, but kind of just does include the NATO countries. So all of that and a land swap and giving away Crimea and giving away eastern portions of Ukraine, that's all what Trump is repping right now. I have one additional big thought, and I'll share that with you after Kim's News. Smash the like button. We bring it to you free.
Smash it with your iron rod.
We ride on the backs of our Patreon and PayPal audience. The show, though, is free on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on iHeartRadio, on Google Podcasts, on every major podcast platform. We come to you free in a PBS NPR model, and we thank our Patreon and PayPal audience. If you want to be part of it, you just click on the Patreon and PayPal links under all videos, and you can join up for anything, $3 a month, a couple dollars a month, or be like one of our great supporters, $100 or $50. Or it's amazing how we are here completely because of our Patreon and PayPal audience. I'm so very grateful to you. All right, Kim's News, and we continue. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. President Trump says it has been a very successful day so far, trying to broker a deal to end the Ukraine-Russia war. Trump first had a one-on-one meeting with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, and they are now meeting with U.S. European allies and the head of NATO. President says he's already spoken to Russia's Vladimir Putin by phone and that he'll be calling him again later on today.
You know, they can serve that lunch. They don't have the stuff that's still, it probably keeps from Friday to Monday. And some of that stuff you can't serve again, but some of it might still be good. I don't know.
They just put the foil over it and brought it back aboard Air Force One.
Yeah, that lunch that didn't get served in Alaska, they can serve it here.
Why not? They're all about sustainable, Mark. The House Oversight Committee's probe into the Jeffrey Epstein case is underway, the panel kicking off its investigation with testimony from former Attorney General Bill Barr. He held that position from 2019 when Epstein was arrested on federal sex trafficking charges, and in 2020 when his longtime associate Ghislaine Maxwell was also arrested. According to the committee chair, James Comer, Barr testified he didn't know of any information that would implicate President Trump. Of course, James Comer would say that. Bar one of 10 high-profile former federal officials subpoenaed to appear before the committee. Members have indicated a willingness to call more witnesses as well. More National Guard troops are headed to Washington, D.C. from Republican-led states. The governors of Ohio and South Carolina are sending a combined 350 troops to D.C. to assist in federal law enforcement. This comes after West Virginia's governor announced he would also send hundreds of troops to D.C. as well. In recent days, Trump has deployed National Guard troops and federal law enforcement officers to address what he says is crime and homelessness in the nation's capital.
It's so cool that crime and homelessness doesn't exist in all those other states you talk about, and that's why they can send their troops in. It's so wonderful that their security concerns are totally taken care of, and they can send these troops to another way to suck up to the president, who they are always playing for some future deal.
They are kissing my ass.
Exactly, with their troops.
More than 20 Democratic-led states are suing the Trump administration over a decision to cut grants for crime victims programs. The Justice Department is ending Victims of Crime Act grants unless the states help federal agencies with immigration enforcement. I guess screw the victims, right? Over a billion...
leveraging help for the victims against this other thing that they want, which is participation essentially in this immigration purge.
More than $1 billion a year is doled out to states for these grants. The grants provide families with everything from emergency shelter to forensic exams to burial services as well. And again, the Trump administration is cutting those grants unless they get buy-in on immigration enforcement. President Trump pushing to eliminate mail-in ballots ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. The president shared a post on Truth Social outlining his plan to lead a movement to get rid of mail-in ballots. It targets what he called highly inaccurate, very expensive, seriously controversial voting machines.
And he said it in all caps, so you know it's it's
true.
It's the real thing.
Why are you yelling?
Yeah.
Trump has previously claimed there's been widespread voter fraud involving mail-in ballots and pledged to fight for election integrity, yada, yada, yada. The Texas House, speaking of elections, is planning to move quickly on redistricting efforts. State House Speaker Dustin Burrows says lawmakers will have to move quickly and their schedules will be demanding until their work is complete now that Democrats who fled the state have returned. Democrats left the state boycotting a special session called by Governor Greg Abbott to pass a new GOP-friendly House map. The group returned after their demands were met to have state lawmakers adjourn their first special session Friday and have California Democrats introduce their own House map. As Mark mentioned moments ago, Newsmax agreeing to pay $67 million to settle a lawsuit with Dominion Voting Systems. The cable channel is expected to pay Dominion $27 million this month and another $40 million in the next 2 years. The lawsuit filed against Newsmax in 2021 stemming from debunked claims that the 2020 election results were fraudulent. And again,
that's a lot of money. I think I might be crying.
Fox
I
News
think between the two judgments, 40, they had the two, right? They had one for libel. Yeah. And then they had one for defamation. I think you put them together, it's about 130 million, something like that.
For lying. That's an expensive lie. Whew. A strike by Air Canada flight attendants is having a ripple effect around the globe. Air Canada forced on Sunday to press pause on its plan to resume limited service after the union representing flight attendants told members to defy a government order to return to work. Nope, not going back to work. Industry analysts say about 100,000 people have already seen their flights canceled worldwide. Shohei Ohtani's 300th career home run ball has sold at auction.
Shohei Ohtani?
Is that what I said? Shohei Ohtani? I said
Shohei. I don't remember what you said, but you didn't say that.
Shohei Ohtani. He had 300th career home run ball. And he auctioned it up. They auctioned it off, and it brought in $36,000. I would have thought maybe it would have gone for a little more. The ball recently, 36 grand.
You're right. I would have thought more.
Nah.
Tony, you do a lot of these games, baseball games. Doesn't 36,000 seem low for a?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good deal. That's going to go up in value for that guy.
Yeah, I would.
I would say.
Wow.
'Cause, I mean,
The
this-
ball
come
was
on.
sold at
Yeah.
Leland's Summer Classic auction. Ohtani hit the home run against the Colorado Rockies at Coors Field in Denver on June 24th. It was his 300th professional home run combined between Major League Baseball and his time in Japan's Professional Baseball League. The ball was caught by a fan who then decided to sell that sucker.
Maybe it's because it was a combination of
Mhm.
Japan and MLB. What do you think, Tony, on something like that?
Maybe. Yeah, because I
don't
think
know.
the
I just
last
don't
one went
understand
for a
it.
lot. The last one went for a lot more money, didn't it?
Yeah, but it was all Major
And
League Baseball.
MLB.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Anyway, interesting.
Hmm.
Go ahead. Sorry.
6 planets are visible in the sky through Wednesday. Got to pop
What?
out there at night, Mark.
Yeah.
Yep. Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus are aligned, and they can be, I know, so juvenile. They can be seen about 45 minutes before sunset. Some will be visible to the naked eye, but binoculars and a telescope will be needed for Neptune and Uranus. So there you go. It's
And
going to be
this
an
alignment
interesting show.
is when God comes back, or is there any kind of spiritual, religious significance to this, Kim? And if not, can you make up one?
It's when Mark Thompson rises in the night sky and
th-
speaks to all of us. I don't know.
Have you ever been a member of the Chinese Communist Party?
Yeah, that's right.
Everyone has to
Pledge
turn-
your allegiance to the leader.
Put your
It's a
hand
s-
over your heart, whistle to the left, blow into the sun. I don't know.
It's
More than
so
six.
it's a
Go ahead.
6-planet parade.
Morning.
Yeah.
There's 6-planet parade: Mercury,
It's-
Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus.
Only visible through binoculars or telescope, they say, and it's right before sunset.
Some
Cool.
are visible to the naked eye, but 2 of them you have to have your telescope for, or your
Sure.
binocs. Yeah. More than 6,000.
By the way, just because you're on it and because I like to interrupt you, I just saw the numbers. I'm going to do a real segment on this, but I just saw the numbers on this ridiculous effort to colonize Mars or to fly to Mars. It's a Muskian thing, and the government money being poured into it. It's total crap. It's a total, I mean, wall-to-wall waste of money. And you even heard me talk to Professor Fracknoy about it, the astronomer, and we'll and physicist. We'll have him back. But I mean, he's like a Neil deGrasse Tyson type, and Andrew Fracknoy says, yeah, it isn't viable. You know, the trip to Mars isn't viable. The radiation alone, it just makes the trip prohibitive, and then you want to colonize Mars, and so it's like your backup planet. No, get it through your head. It's true. This is the only place you can live. The only place. It doesn't matter what they're going to do to Mars, even if you could travel there. It is the only place. And that money would be so better spent here on this planet, pulling the poisons that we spew into the atmosphere, into the ocean, into the soil, pulling back on those, cleaning up this place, making it inhabitable. Instead, you're going to go to a place that you will never be able to live. You'll never be able to go there, never be able to live. It is a fiction. It is science fiction. Mars 2050. Wow, it looks so cool. Look at those domed villages. And it's all a total bag of crap. And yet it is getting government buy-in. It's worse than crypto. Crypto, you can at least turn it and maybe you can make some money on it, even though it's all a scam. This is wall-to-wall scam, total waste of money, and it pulls away dollars that could be spent so wonderfully on preserving this totally unique planet. It is very possible, and I'll make this point repeatedly, and I'm sorry but I'll just finish with this. It is likely that this is the Goldilocks planet, and there is no other inhabitable life. I mean, intelligent life anywhere in the galaxy, anywhere in our Milky Way galaxy. And that's immense.
I don't know what's wrong with you. Did you not see Total Recall? I mean, obviously, life
The
on Mars
science is ridiculous.
Yeah, all
Come
right.
on.
You're right. When you put it that way, I think,
we're in better shape, but I don't think we're in wildly better shape.
All right.
I mean, creatures from all the galaxy will come and gather on Mars, right?
I forgot. When you put it that way. Yeah.
Unless you get sucked out of the dome and then you're gasping for air.
Oh, wow. Well, that's a moment.
Seriously, what the?
Oh,
Yeah, that's a bad look. Mars
that's a nice
looks
picture.
lovely this time of year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
unless you try to breathe. More than 6,000 new words are being added to the Cambridge Dictionary, words including skibbity, tradwife, and delulu, as like delusional, right?
What
Are
is
being
trad wife?
traditional wife.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Now we call it a trad wife. Yeah.
And what is delulu?
Delusional.
I'm sorry, you said that. And what is skibbity?
Skibbity. It's
Skibbity?
a slang term that I don't really understand the meaning of, but kids use it.
No. Skibbity toilet is a wildly popular YouTube thing.
But that it's now beyond. It's now gone way beyond that.
Oh,
and
there it
the
is.
word is
So-
used by itself to.
So
yeah,
that's a kind of toilet, that urinal? Or you're saying
No,
it's
this
a
is a
video.
YouTube show. He
It's a
talks.
YouTube show,
He always
yeah,
talks out of
but-
a toilet.
Yeah,
Okay.
but now the word skibbity is used for different reasons by the youth.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's happening. These words are
There's
all
never been
being
anything
added
like this.
All right.
to
Well,
reflect the growing influence of internet culture on the English language. The
I
dictionary's lexical program manager is emphasizing the enduring impact of internet culture on language and saying that only words with staying power are added.
yeah, lexical is a ding word. Yeah, I could say.
I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Delulu is not a ding word. I don't think so.
No.
Skibbity, no dinging for that.
Mm.
This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. It's the good stuff. The coffee, the tea, you want it. It's the best. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com is the website. So check it out. The tasting notes make it really easy to shop on this website. Do take a look at the Lion's Mane products. They have the coffee called Clarity Blend and the tea that is turmeric chai tea, and both have the lion's mane in it that's supposed to improve your mental clarity and your outlook. So there's that.
I just like the way it tastes.
Yeah, it's so
Honestly.
good.
Rocking some right now. 2 new refreshing teas.
Yeah.
And a Clarity Blend coffee, all from CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Go ahead, Kim. Give me the
You do find something that you're interested in and you put it in your little electronic cart.
Don't
Make
say
sure-
it's a little electronic car. Why do you always say that?
It's a little teeny tiny grocery
It's nothing.
cart.
It's
The little
neither
icon is like a little
big or
cart.
small, but you
It's
have
a
to
little
ascribe
teeny
some
tiny
size
cart.
to it. I don't.
If you
I
put
don't
something in your
appreciate it.
massive internet cart,
Yeah.
please
thank you.
then use our checkout code. It'll save you 10%. It's Mark T with no spaces, MARKT, and that gets you 10% off of whatever is in your massive hulking cart at
Thank you.
CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. I'm Kim McAllister, and this is the Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This is Mark Thompson.
It's unbelievably offensive.
I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do.
Hey Mark, it's George Santos here. A lot of people are telling me you're a liar.
That's pure speculation.
There's always been, in this country, 30 to 35% idiots.
Morning.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Your Honor, I'd like to ask for a recess.
Can you let him finish, sir?
You cannot say you love your country.
That was very inappropriate. Don't talk to me that way.
What do you think I'm going to say to you?
Whoever is producing this thing has no idea what they're doing.
Saudi Arabia pays cash.
Oh, yes. Thank you for being here, everyone. So cool to kind of share views. We exchange them in the chat. You reach out occasionally and send me an email. The email address, just so you know, it is themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. I read all the emails. I try to read all the comments as well and respond when appropriate. Yes, it's true. The major meeting at the White House is going on as scheduled. The meeting between Zelensky and European leaders. And you can we'll share everything with you tomorrow, of course, but you can find even parts that if you missed it that we shared with you just a few minutes ago. Again, Zelensky is accusing Russia of trying to humiliate Ukraine and Europe by deliberately killing civilians prior to even these talks. So the allegation is, hey, if you were serious about a peace agreement of any kind, you wouldn't launch these offensive military strikes prior to the negotiations you are having with Trump. Zelensky's saying that the latest strikes by Moscow on 4 Ukrainian cities are demonstrative and cynical. 7 people were killed in a drone attack on Kharkiv, including a small girl. The Russians were, quote, aware that a meeting is taking place in Washington that will address the end of the war, and Putin will commit demonstrative killings to maintain pressure on Ukraine and Europe, as well as a way to humiliate diplomatic efforts. Those are all the words of Zelensky prior to meeting with Trump. He said that Ukraine required an end to the war and reliable security guarantees and a just and, quote, dignified peace. And he added, Moscow must hear the word stop. It really is true, though, that Trump, having come off the meeting with Putin, is likely to pressure Zelensky to accept some kind of poisonous agreement. I don't know that Zelensky can accept it, and it's a bit instructive and sort of an important detail that other European nation representatives will be there. The heads of European nations en masse descending on the White House with Zelensky, that is a historic moment. This is truly history that you're seeing, and it's deserving of the sort of history that we're witnessing. It's that big a deal. Ukraine, the breadbasket of Europe, you've heard all of that. Go ahead, Kim, sorry.
The leaders of France and the UK came in support of Ukraine, but I wonder if it's also a statement as they don't really trust Trump to handle this solo.
Oh, absolutely right. Absolutely right. It's true that they have, and they shouldn't have any faith in Trump. They have little or no faith in Trump to get anything. Oh, look, essentially Trump is repping for Putin. He's repping turning over the Crimea, which is already, you can say water over the dam. It happened during Obama. And now he's talking about turning over eastern portions of Ukraine. I mean, in return for what? And by the way, those eastern portions of Ukraine, see earlier in the show, we made this point, they haven't even been taken over by the Russians. So you're surrendering a lot. I'm unclear when they keep talking about, some kind of land swap. What's the swap part?
Right.
I'm really unclear on that. There's a lot of verbiage being thrown here that doesn't really track. And then I wanted to, I don't know if I can, let me just round it off with that Mark Hertling stuff, who he's Lieutenant General, I believe, retired now. And after the meeting on Friday, this was his take on how essentially there is a giveaway going on. Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, Alex, what I'd say is what emerged from Alaska didn't appear to be a step toward peace, but it was instead a dangerous reframing by both President Putin and President Trump. Because for months, President Trump has insisted that the goal is to secure a ceasefire. And Zelensky was okay with that because he knows he can further negotiate. But after Alaska, Trump's claimed that a mere ceasefire, his words, not mine, was unreliable and only a final peace agreement would do. The problem with that declaration is pretty obvious. It's tough for Ukraine, as President Zelensky said, to negotiate peace when they're constantly being shelled. Without a ceasefire, the battle dictates the talks, and the aggressor holds the cards. Ceasefires are imperfect, no doubt about it, and they're often violated, but they matter. They create a breathing space necessary for negotiations. That's what Zelensky's looking for.
Very good. Thank you, Tony. And so I have one last piece to play for you, and then I think we've made the point, and you see how, in a way, one-sided this all is. Don't I have the Brzezinski stuff? He was the ambassador to Poland. His dad is Big Brzezinski, Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was sort of a huge figure in foreign policy during Carter administration, et cetera. Here are his takes quickly on everything going down between Ukraine and U.S. and Russia.
Sure. Well, American security guarantees are the holy grail in all this. And I say this having served as ambassador in Poland, which literally was in the crosshairs of Putin because it was delivering the weapons to the Ukrainians that were using to defend themselves against Russia. And the security guarantee, the Article 5 commitment here in Poland worked. Without that Article 5 guarantee, I can only imagine what Poland and the Baltic states and Romania would have faced. So Article 5, the fact that Witkoff and Rubio, negotiator Witkoff and Secretary Rubio are talking about it, is truly the crux of a deal that the Ukrainians could buy into. And a security guarantee would have to keep the peace on both sides. This has been a terribly bloody war with casualties massive on both sides. And over the next few years, there will be feelings of retribution and passion for retribution on both sides. The Russia-Ukraine conflict has historical dimensions that if President Trump can broker a ceasefire very soon, would be worthy of celebration because it is so historically rooted and so recently bloody. And to put something in place that stops that would be worthy of accolades.
Oh, there you go. I love that because two things are true there. First of all, I think he contextualizes it beautifully. And I also think that you get in that one instant more in the way of an institutional knowledge of NATO and Russian relationships, just in that little moment that we talked to the former ambassador to Poland right there, than you get in the entire Trump administration. There is none of that. These guys have no sense of anything. Witkoff is a real estate guy. He's a billionaire real estate guy that Trump put in charge of all of this, and he has no background in diplomacy. And the Trump administration fired all the diplomats. The State Department has been cored out. Nobody knows anything. You have utter incompetence. You have people leaving the itinerary, the menu, the seating chart, and the pronunciation guide in the goddamn fax machine at a hotel at some DoubleTree in Alaska. And it was found by someone, and then it was sent to NPR. You have the signal chat that's all alive with back and forth. These people are rank amateurs, and they're dealing with sensitive diplomacy at a critical time in world development and diplomatic relationships. It's so alarming, and yet it's where we are.
You think about, it was a security breach, and it might have only been a couple of phone numbers from people that were there and a list of what they're having for lunch, but they could have left anything there. I mean, this was an accident, but it could have been an accident where something even more important was left behind because they don't know what they're doing. They just randomly walked away. We're lucky that it was only lunch.
Yeah, and when you criticize the signal chat thing, and this will be criticized as well, you'll hear, how dare, it's of course typical of the left that they would focus on this one miscue. This is nothing of importance was left in there, a seating chart, big deal. I mean, they try to play down their massive screw-ups, but the truth is they can't find their butt with both hands. These people are total incompetence, and yet they are all we have in handling all of this. Thankfully, there's some European nations being represented at that table today because Trump is just thinking about new ways he can add gold and another doorway to the White House.
It's embarrassing. It makes America look like bumbling fools.
I mean, it really is it's a smear. It's a self-own, self-inflicted wound. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., the takeover continues. As Kim mentioned, 3 states deploying hundreds of National Guard troops to D.C., South Carolina and Ohio and West Virginia, pledging troops to go to Washington. We're anti-federal chaos. Democratic cities preparing for the worst as Trump expands his desire to take over Washington, D.C. and Los Angeles. I mean, he sent National Guard troops to L.A. despite California opposing that move. There's a lawsuit from the state about that. And the idea that you're fighting crime as a result of the presence of these troops, it's absurd. I'll tell you what you're fighting. You're fighting businesses and businesses flourishing. In fact, I just saw this. This is in my, I'm from Washington, so I get a lot of stuff. I still follow my hometown, Reservations plunging across D.C. restaurants after Trump's police takeover. Online reservations dropped more than 25% in the days following President Trump's announcement that he was federalizing D.C. cops. This is from Open Table. On Monday, the day Trump announced he would invoke the D.C. Home Rule Act and federalize the city's police department for the first time in history, online reservations in the district dropped by 16% compared to the same date in 2024. Tuesday, as the National Guard began mobilizing in the district, reservations were 27% below their 2024 levels. Wednesday, they were down even more, 31%. I mean, if you're trying to run a business, it's hard enough. The D.C. restaurant industry, one of the worst hit in the country by pandemic shutdowns, had seen 11 consecutive months of year-over-year improvement in reservation numbers. As of Sunday, the city stands nearly alone among the largest 20 U.S. cities tracked by Open Table in having a drop in August reservations compared to last year. Only Las Vegas, which has seen its own economy buffeted by Trump's immigration and trade policies. Buffeted is an easy word. It's a lot worse than that. They should say negatively affected. Has seen fewer diners this month than in August of last year. And the timing couldn't be worse for D.C.'s restaurants, hundreds of which are preparing for Summer Restaurant Week to begin this week. That annual event offers diners $25 and $35 brunches and lunches at more than 350 restaurants around the city, and people just don't want to go out. You don't want to go out in a city where there are troops everywhere. Trump announced the takeover of D.C.'s police last week to address what he described as, quote, rising crime, even though the data is down. You know the rest on that. So I would just say that, a lot of this theater and performative stuff, and that's what this is, right? You don't really think you're going to reduce crime in D.C. by somehow putting federal troops on the street, by putting Pam Bondi in charge of the Metropolitan Police Department. You don't really think that you're going to affect crime one way or the other, do you? I mean, you're not going to Anacostia. You're going to Georgetown. You're going to Chevy Chase. That's not where the crime wave is most intense. Crime really is a problem in other parts of Washington where you don't have a lot of troops. In Anacostia, black on black crime. I mean, there is a race-specific issue here with many of these neighborhoods never getting out of the sort of economic poverty that's informed so much of the evolution of Washington through the decades. There's been a lot of gentrification of Washington. There is a crime problem. I think it's a crime problem that sort of coexists with other crime problems in other cities. Again, you didn't go to St. Louis. I mean, you can't go there because of, you don't have that power. The federal government can't just move into St. Louis and take over their police department the way you've done in Washington, D.C. But they want to move into L.A. They want to go to Chicago. They want to go to these blue cities, as we've discussed. So, again, the ripple effect of your performative crap, the theater of sending Dr. Phil out with the immigration stuff, getting Dean Cain as an honorary ICE agent. This is all performative theater BS. Giving DHS another $45 million for ICE, $45 billion, I think it is. You can, whatever the amount is, it's directed mostly to this performative thing, right? Showing the cruelty of these ICE agents and showing the cruelty of the immigration policy so that people will self-deport, or you'll get the idea like, wow, I'm getting a lot for my money. He does what he says he's going to do. Tony, play for me what's happening in Washington, D.C. These are protesters. They are nonviolent, and here's what happened, at least to one of them. Is there audio here? I thought there was. But...
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, taken down from behind. I mean, in a thuggish, brutal way. Show it to me. You can show it to me.
What were they
again,
doing? Were they just chanting? They weren't breaking into a store or anything.
Yeah, it just lined up on the edge there. That's the end of the video. Here's Tony will show it to you again. So as ICE walks down the street, law enforcement walks down the street, and show of force, there are people lined up on the edge, and here's a guy just sitting there, and boom, they take him out.
Why?
Because the cruelty is the idea. And there's no idea on anybody, no ID. They're all masked. They're all dressed like they're going into Fallujah or something. This is absolutely un-American. It's inexcusable. It's wrong. And they are, Mindy says, police are being told to be abusive.
I feel like I'm missing some kind of context there. Like, what did the guy do beforehand? Is there something that he did wrong?
You saw it. We showed it. He's just standing there on the side. He's yelling stuff. I don't know what he's yelling, but
really,
Tony, he's right there on the side. You'll see it on the left of the frame.
Yeah.
Yeah. They've blocked his face. That's what that little black box is.
Oh.
But you can see him just standing there. I mean, I don't know what you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it's just, I mean, it's shocking. It's so shocking.
That's one part of the raids in Washington, D.C. It's just surprising people don't want to make a dinner reservation with that crap going on the streets. And then as to what's happening in the agricultural belt of America, I've spoken before about how these people they're going after, they're not the gangs, they're not MS-13, they're people at Home Depot. You know this. They're people at Lowe's. They're people at a high school graduation, at a kitchen somewhere, at a landscaping business. This is brutal. This isn't what most Americans signed up for, but it's what's happening in major numbers. And these are the words of somebody in the agriculture business talking about the fact that his business is being decimated by ICE. They're taking so many of those workers in the fields. And so he's tried to replace those workers with Americans, those who don't have the citizenship issues. And Americans don't last an hour doing what these guys do. Go ahead, Tony.
They're putting Alabamans back to work in my area. Experience I've had, they ain't too good at what they do.
Keith Smith says most immigration workers left after the law took effect. So this potato farmer hired Americans. Problem is, he says, most show up late, work slower, and are ready to head home after lunch. Some even quit after just one day out in the field.
There's a Hispanic man that works for us, and I say, he's 52, and he'll make anywhere from $70 to $100 a day. I said, if you can keep up with him and do a good job, you can make that. But they're not physically in shape to do it. And, probably not mentally tough enough to do it, some of them.
Over on this tomato farm, the story's not much different. Brent Smith may be the only exception.
The bending over, and if you're not used to working and kneeling down and bending over and constantly up and down all day long, is the grueling part of it. It really is. I mean, other than that, it's not any harder than anything else.
With a 9.9 unemployment rate, Alabama is almost 1% higher than the national average. Tomato farmers say skilled workers can make anywhere from $200 to $300 a day, but unskilled workers make much less. And farmers say many Americans are not physically fit and simply don't work fast enough.
It's just going to take body conditioning, mental conditioning, in order to earn enough money to make it worth a day's work.
You look like you're frozen in time there, Mark.
Is that me frozen or
yeah,
is it me frozen?
I was wondering. I'm like, is it me? Is it you?
Sorry,
I don't know.
It's me. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Now we can hear you now. Yeah,
I know. That's
but
all
we've been
there.
saying for a long time, Mark, that Americans aren't going to be able to do these jobs. That they don't want these jobs. That's not a surprise. I mean, does anyone feel like they didn't realize that was going to happen?
No, you're exactly right. I mean, there are no surprises here in a sense, but to see it all play out so nakedly, and as we've talked repeatedly, and now I hear it in other places as well, the conflation of the problems at the border with all other immigration problems. It's as though frustration with the border policy led to this spillover effect, and now we're just living it, and it's a nightmare. You just can't be cool with what's happening with these ICE agents and what they're doing. Florida tomatoes rotting in the field, says Tammy. So it's it's the state of the state. And then lastly, I wanted to end you because we got to end with you on just a note about Jeffrey.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Jeffrey Epstein. Apparently, Donald Trump and his family are musing or reflecting or thinking privately about the fact that it's Democrats who have launched this campaign for the Epstein files to be released, that the GOP isn't behind it, that no, red-blooded American would want the Epstein files released. It's all a Democratic plot.
Wait, wasn't it all those MAGA podcast people that were all harped up on it?
Yeah, we played a bunch of them for you through the days who were demanding the release. In fact, one of them was Mr. MAGA, Donald Trump. I want to release the Epstein files. I think I'd redact them, is what he said, but I'd want to release them. He was most tentative about that. And we all know that he's all over the Epstein files like a bad smell. Mm-hmm. And so that when you're looking at all the people who had ongoing associations with Jeffrey Epstein, it's not just Republicans and it's not just Democrats, it's both. And so the idea that it's a Democratic plot is something that he's going to hatch. He's trying to hatch now, and we'll see how it goes. And yes, Ukraine is a distraction, taking over D.C. is a distraction, but I don't think he's involved in these things purely as a distraction. I just think they have the added value of being a distraction from this issue, which is dogging him and will continue to dog him. So, a lot today. Trump, on Putin's advice, launching an assault on mail-in ballots and voting machines. I thought that was one of the big breaking news stories of the day, apart from the fact that there's a sit-down going on at the White House of historic proportions. We'll know more about that tomorrow, and the aftermath from the Alaska summit. There is... oh, you want to run the video of him walking unevenly on the red carpet, Kim? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's kind of a good preview to tomorrow, and I know David K. Johnston is going to mention that tomorrow. We have David K. Johnston. We have Michael Hiltzik will be on the show tomorrow, as well as Jefferson Graham, so it's going to be a great Tuesday. One of the things I know David K. Johnston wants to talk about is this video where you see Trump kind of all over the red carpet.
Oh, as he walks off the plane, he seems to kind of... He was sort of meandering,
in a weird gait, like in kind of stumbling all over the place. And some have been saying that that's an indication of dementia, that this is some type of mental issue that he may be having. So, yeah, we'll talk about that.
Well, we'll show you the video tomorrow, I think, and then David can comment on it. But, yeah, I saw it. It was kind of him meandering up the red carpet instead of walking in a straight line. And I will say this, for a guy who's so image conscious as is Trump, that it was a bad look. So I think it's worth remarking on. So yeah, we'll show it to you tomorrow. Alaska was a distraction, says Phineas. Yeah, I mean, it might have been. I mean, you're looking for, he slapped it together quickly. So that's a fair point. I mean, I don't know what the expectation was on the Trump-Putin summit. I'll just bookend this entire show today by saying what I've told you before and what you likely knew already, which is there's a lot of diplomatic heavy lifting before a summit. Most of the time, some kind of agreement on some basic aspects of something like a ceasefire or even a peace agreement have already been crafted before the summit takes place. That's why you need diplomats and those steeped in the back and forth of diplomacy and the history of the nations involved to really pull that stuff off. And then you bring on the theater of Air Force One and the red carpet and the flyover if you want. I mean, I thought that was all embarrassing, but okay, if that's what you want, you bring on the pomp and circumstance the way you see it. But none of this that I've just described was preceded by the other stuff, by the real heavy lifting of diplomacy. And so I don't know what he expected to get. So to Phineas's point, maybe it was a distraction. I don't know. On some level, Trump all of a sudden felt he wanted to hit the gas pedal on what was going on in Ukraine and Russia, and he basically let Putin just eat him for lunch, grab a couple of photo ops, and hit it and quit it. I mean, Putin was back to Russia, before dinner. It's crazy. Richard Delamater say, good morning, Mark, says Murphy Rowan. Mark and all chatters, smash the iron rod, donate to boost democratic speech. That's from Murphy Rowan. Don't take my word for it.
It with your iron
From the
rod.
Murph. Murphy Rowan, thank you for the $5 super chat. Thanks, John. Great entertainment watching trolls fail. Oh, that's for John Anton, who's our designated troll right now. Yeah. Thank you for that, Harry. Vilma, one of the OGs of this show, writes, the summit can be summed up like this. Superfan meets hero. Ukraine gets nothing. Sadly, I think there's a lot of truth to that. Noe Marie Clarity with a $5 super chat says, the irony of quid pro quo Don calling anyone else corrupt while meeting with Zelensky. Yeah, I mean, truly. Trump is for sale on everything. Chaplain Fred for the $10 super chat. Hi, Mark and Kim. A little late to the show. Question. Who is Trump to decide who or what gets what? It's so disgusting. What is the U.S. going to benefit from all of the Ukraine-Russia conflict? Well, I would say two things. U.S., because we're a superpower, we have a place at pretty much every table. And in this case, we were supplying a lot of weaponry to Ukraine. And so we are, I'd suggest we're waging a proxy war. I said it at the beginning when this whole thing started. And Joe Biden was the president at that time. And I said, this is really a proxy war because you had such a flow of weaponry into Ukraine. And the problem was, and this is part of the longer conversation, I'd love to have it, we can have it with David K. Johnston tomorrow, that weaponry was restrained. The kind of weaponry was defensive. We really kind of didn't want to get involved, but nonetheless wanted to push back Putin. So while we wanted to stop the bleeding, we weren't really producing the kind of hardware associated with stopping the bleeding and the kind, I would say, of policy. Like you have to green light Ukraine and saying, hey, we'll back you in offensive strikes of the sort we've seen where drones go in and hit refineries in Russia. There wasn't that rhetoric, at least openly, coming from the Biden administration. And so anyway, that's our place at the table, and that's why we're there. And, Trump has already tried to extract, I think, rare earth mineral rights from Ukraine, et cetera. There are all kinds of ways he's trying to wedge his foot in that door. But that's the reason we're involved in negotiations. Chaplain Fred says, planets are lining up to let Mark know to start the show on time. I thought we did pretty well today. We started, I think, about 4 minutes after. Lisa Paxton, it's not every news story that ends up with yada, yada, yada. I like it. I know that was really great.
You just woo.
I thought I noted it and I would have busted Kim on it, but I thought it was appropriate that she put yada, yada, yada there, actually. Yeah. So I let it pass. It is a little wee shopping cart, so small, says Mindy. So she's on your wee shopping cart thing at Coachella'ValleyCoffee.com. Maybe ship some of that tea that helps with mental clarity to Trump, says Susan Roberts. Wow. I see what you did. When is MAGA going to propose renaming Jupiter after Trump, since it is the largest and there's never been a bigger gaseous windbag? Wow. Oh, that took a real ugly... No. It took an ugly turn. I thought...
Don't talk to me that way.
I know. I thought it took, it was really quite lovely until it...
It was very inappropriate.
Mark, I think you were naive to believe that we are the only intelligent life in the Milky Way, in the moment with Paul Sisler II says. Second, eventually the human race should be expanding in the universe, beginning in our solar system. Well, let me help you with something that is basic science. If you like, I can play for you, but I won't do it right now. The piece from the noted astronomer Brian Cox, who speaks quite eloquently about this. If you look at, you just said the solar system, okay, but let's talk about the galaxy. He talks about the galaxy, and he talks about the fact this is an award-winning physicist and astronomer, okay? He talks about the fact that it is very likely that we are the only intelligent life in the galaxy. And if you look at these numbers, and Tony probably has them, or Kim has them, the number of stars like our sun in the galaxy, the number of planets in the galaxy, just the Milky Way galaxy, in the universe of ever-expanding space, there are billions more. In this sole galaxy, there are hundreds of millions of planets and stars, and still it is the learned conclusion of this award-winning astronomer, and he's not alone, and scientist and physicist, that we likely are alone in the Milky Way galaxy. So what I would say to you, Robert Sisler, with all respect, is go back and look. I know it seems incredible, just the numbers. There's got to be another winning lottery ticket in the Milky Way galaxy. No, there doesn't. Go back and read a book called The First 3 Minutes. It talks about how the universe began, how the heat, chemical reactions, the physics of the universe had to come together. And only in the way it coalesced do you end up in this place where still evolution had to be just perfect to end up where we are. So before you write a comment like that, or like, come on, Mark, you're naive. I mean, just the numbers alone. I used to say that when I was a kid. Then I read into it. And I would suggest if you really look at it, you could see a way in which intelligent life, kind of this idea you have that they're coming here with UFOs, they're building the pyramids, they're doing, and then they're booking it out. How that really isn't likely and probably impossible. Now, you may find single-cell life forms. You may find them on Mars. But when you talk about a societal, intelligent life, no, not in the Milky Way galaxy. It's almost certain, based on, again, everything that I've read and heard from award-winning physicists and astronomers, that we are the Goldilocks planet that way. So, what else? Anything, or we have to go?
Oh my God, I think that's it.
Oh my gosh.
Everyone has to get to, we have to go to KFI and do some radio, you know?
Oh, yeah. I've got also an interview today that is pretty provocative that will drop soon. I've got to do it, but I think it'll drop probably in the next week or 10 days with an ex-Scientologist, and his story is riveting. And I'll have it for you in the next week or 10 days. So for now, what a lot we got to. Tony, thanks a lot, man. I know I dumped a lot on your plate, and you really rocked it. Appreciate
Thanks,
that.
Tony.
And Kim, always bringing it.
Kim, how are you?
Yeah. So I know Trump's got the cankles issue, and I guess maybe Kim was onto something when you talk about the way he walks. We'll get on that with David K. Johnston and Michael Hiltzik, 2 Pulitzer Prize winners tomorrow on the show. And now, the great show.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Out of time. Bye-bye.
Out of time. Thanks, everyone. Till tomorrow. Bye-bye.